Another day and some more Fallout 76 news. In this video, what I want to look at are a couple of things. First and foremost, the latest Inside the Vault article that details some things about the future of Fallout 76, including when some of the next updates will be coming. Even beyond that, I actually want to look at and highlight some interesting new hirings from Bethesda, which could be indicative of what's going on with future games, like past hirings were indicative of Fallout 76, some interesting things going on with the Atomic Shop, and then something on actually the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. If you guys do enjoy the content, you can leave a like or subscribe. I will have timestamps for everything down below in the description and a pinned comment if you get bored of one story. But either way, the first thing I want to touch on is this latest Inside the Vault article from Bethesda. They post these things every Tuesday, but yesterday's was actually delayed until today, being a Wednesday. Initially, I was pretty hopeful about this. I was like, oh cool, maybe we're going to get a lot of details on this one. Unfortunately, it wasn't really the case. I'm actually kind of surprised they delayed it at all. The first thing they touch on are future patches to Fallout 76. They say the next one is coming on January 14th, comparing it again to the December 11th update. The December 11th update is notable because it was the biggest update by far we had seen, addressing tons of issues. Specifically, they go on to say it's going to improve performance and stability, a line they consistently say in like every update, and I'm still not really sure what that means. Like, I understand what it means in theory, but in reality, I feel like my performance hasn't been improving that much. But more specifically, they name improvements or changes to challenges and quests, fixes to perks and weapons, and tackling some of the various exploits. So hopefully this means this latest duping exploit will finally be patched, but I wouldn't be surprised if another one pops up. On the previous patch for Fallout 76, the major duping exploit was fixed, and the next day, YouTube videos were uploaded showing off a new one that hadn't been patched yet. I think if Bethesda really wants to squash some of these exploits, they have to be a bit more proactive with the patching of them, even potentially doing hot fixes throughout the week to just make it so duping comes to an end, because I think almost all of us want that. They go on to say that there's going to be another patch coming towards the end of the month. This is going to address things voiced by the community. One such one being the number of plans vendors have available, as well as fixing a few legendary mods and continuing to address issues with some perks. That plans comment in particular, I'm excited to see what they do with. If you don't know right now, if you actually want to get some of the more obscure or rare plans in Fallout 76, you often have to just server hop to no end. This really isn't fun, but it is the most optimal way to actually get some of these rare items. Some people in the community propose just make it so the rare ones are very expensive, and that's the gateway to actually getting it, not just having to find it, but then making it so vendors have every single plan available all at the same time. I would really like that change. It would make it a lot easier to make videos on certain rare items, but we'll see what they actually end up doing. But also, as they mention legendary fixes, what does that mean? Like, does that involve nerfing to legendary weapons, making it so the explosive legendaries that right now are kind of essential aren't as powerful? I guess that's one way to get around duping, considering those are some of the most predominantly duped weapons in the game. There's certainly been a theme as far as balance changes go of nerfing certain components of the game or making certain things harder to actually get, so I wouldn't be shocked if that's what else we see. They also share details about how you can actually earn the Fallout Classic Collection if you want to. Basically, you just install them through the Bethesda.net launcher as long as you played the game at some point in 2018. But towards the end of this article, they actually add one final note talking about future DLCs. They've hinted at these over the past couple, naming some of the stuff we are going to be getting, and in this one they say they're not ready to share the details yet, but basically the turnaround from when the DLC is announced to when we could actually play it is going to be very short. Going on to say the goal is to get the content in our hands as quickly as possible so we can iterate, improve, and make any needed changes based on your feedback. And that's really it. I was pretty hopeful for this one, but in the end it ended up not being too big of an Inside the Vault. But if you look at some of the older updates, it was like when it first started, it was true communication, some reasoning, some plans, actually giving kind of a nice breakdown of what's going to be going on, where now it was more like, all right, we're going to patch some stuff, here's a couple of examples, and we're going to patch some more stuff down the line. I still do really appreciate these. I think any heads up is good, but I really like the initial ones where we got a little bit more, and I would like it if these kind of venture back into that territory, giving some of the reasoning behind certain changes, not just the fact that there will be changes. Moving on though, the developer behind Fallout 76, Bethesda Game Studios, is actually hiring some new people. Leading up to Fallout 76, there's that one really notable hiring, looking for somebody who had worked on a freemium game in the past. It seems pretty likely that that could have been useful when working on Fallout 76, which has a lot of those kind of features and functionality. Several of you guys messaged me about this, linking back to a Skullsies video, so I'll have that link down below. He follows these job listings significantly more closely, and recently there's been some changes or new additions. predictions. Some of the interesting listings for Maryland are things like an animation programmer or even a physics programmer. They've talked in the past how in future games they're eager to improve their animation system, and this seems to only be further evidence of that. Also, looking at some other websites where they post job listings, there's definitely some meme potential. 16 days ago at the Maryland position, there was a new listing for a PR manager. Interestingly though, it's not on the main ZeniMax website, so this could have actually been filled in that time. And just 2 days ago, there's a posting for the Austin studio of a quest designer. The Austin studio are the people that are actually working and updating Fallout 76, providing some of the DLC. Overall, many of these job listings were posted not too long ago, so it certainly seems Bethesda is at least somewhat ramping up production, or maybe there's actually just some turnover. Another thing I actually want to touch on is this really kind of obnoxious thing around an analyst predictions for Fallout 76, Starfield, and the Elder Scrolls 6. This has been getting a lot of traction on YouTube recently, and I feel like it's really getting misrepresented. I don't think people are covering it fairly or even all that accurately, so I wanted to give my own take on it. There's this analyst known as Michael Pachter. You may have heard of him, you probably haven't. He makes bold predictions about certain video games, and again, he's a video game analyst. It's kind of his job to make predictions. Recently, in a yearly article from GameIndustry.biz, he made a prediction saying that the Elder Scrolls 6 is coming in 2019. Basically saying that since Fallout 76 flopped, it's essential that Bethesda gets this game out ASAP, and they're ramping up production in order to meet that. Subsequently, you saw a ton of YouTube videos or headlines reporting on this, and many of them seeming fairly matter-of-fact or even being unsure about whether or not it's true, as if there's a chance it's true. So first and foremost, this is a guy that's predicted this for the past 3 years. He made the same prediction in 2016 for 2017, in 2017 for 2018, and now in 2018 for 2019. So I mean, eventually he's gonna be right. It might take another 5 to 6 years like most of us predict, but I personally don't really think just because some guy thinks, oh, Fallout 76 flopped, that's gonna lead to Bethesda totally changing the release schedule that they previously reported on. They said Starfield's next, then the Elder Scrolls 6 is after that. And even beyond that, he went on to further predict that he doesn't think the Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield will be at risk due to the Fallout 76 controversies, directly saying Fallout 76 will be more of a blip than something that sets trends for future releases. This is another thing I personally don't agree with. I think the Fallout 76 controversy makes it even less likely we actually see a Starfield release in 2019. Something that to begin with would be pretty rare and unlikely, but when you have this bad of user sentiment, it's not the most prime time to release a new game, especially in a new franchise that you want to perform well. I think most of us would agree Bethesda has some serious repair work to do as far as their brand goes, and hopefully they're successful with that. Hopefully Fallout 76 acts as a learning experience and one that they can actually rectify through updates and free DLCs. And finally, I actually want to provide a couple of corrections, something that I was kind of wrong about in my last video. I incorrectly said that an item on the Atomic Shop would be getting removed because it was listed as only for a limited time. In reality, as many of you guys commented down below when I tried to highlight some of those comments, it's just that the sale was for a limited time. Basically, in the Atomic Shop right now, it seems like if an item is on sale and says limited time, that means the sale is for a limited time. If it just says a limited time, that means the items themselves are for a limited time. In the past, there was technically one that had both, but that was later changed. Either way, I feel like this is just one of those things that's not the best designed. A better signifier, I think, would clear up a lot of confusion, or maybe I'm just an idiot. Over the past couple of update videos, towards the end, I just kind of wanted to include an update on the bans, considering I was the one that kind of messaged a lot of people that reported being banned incorrectly. Whether or not that is true or not, we still don't really know. But as I said, at some point, when everyone was back in the office, we'd get an official response. As of right now, we still haven't gotten anything like that. I was really hoping today with that Inside the Vault article we'd see something, especially considering numerous people continue to have no response from support or even some of the Bethesda staff members they reached out to, which I was instructed to tell all of you to do. For a couple people, they actually messaged the wrong person accidentally. It was the same name, but one worked at Bethesda, one was just some random dude. But even since fixing that wrong, a couple of days have passed and we still have nothing, especially on the support side. I feel like that's a pretty big issue. It's been multiple weeks at this point, so I'm increasingly less hopeful that anything will actually be touched on or changed as a result of this, and I think a lot of the people might have just lost those accounts. At the end of the day, maybe they're all just lying and they were banned rightfully. That definitely is a possibility, but obviously I choose to believe something differently. Before we end things off though, I actually want to share a kind of miniature fun fact. It's something I like to mention on the channel every once in a while. detail and particularly relevant to me. So I think a lot of people say psychology or think of psychology and they assume, okay, like a clinical psychologist. That being the type of person you sit down with, talk about your feelings or what kind of issues you're having. That's just one part of the field. It's a lot bigger than that. Clinical psychologists are definitely some of the most well known. It's also some of the hardest programs to get into, many of them only taking a few applicants at a time. But even beyond that, you also do have more in the academic sphere, like if you've taken a psychology class. Although there are clinical psychologists that also teach on the side, the vast majority of my professors were actually researchers. Basically, you're employed by a university, you teach a bunch of classes, but then also really your main focus is conducting research and getting significant findings. This brings prestige as well as money in the form of federal grants to that university. You get grants from other organizations also, but it seems like the vast majority are from federal grants. In that category, there are a plethora of different things, pretty much everything. And a good chunk of people pursuing a degree or specifically a PhD in psychology will go this route. A lot of PhD programs really focus on teaching you how to conduct research and thus you apply that later on at a university. Those are like the fields of cognitive psych, neuropsychology, neuroscience itself, and even there's some AI applications and things like that. A psychiatrist is actually a doctor. They go to med school, they have to do a postdoc, a residency, things like that. The difference being a psychiatrist can actually prescribe drugs, and again, they go to medical school. A psychologist gets a PhD typically. And then you have the area where I kind of want to more go into, that's applied psychology. That's the interaction of psychology and more practical things, using the research or theory to actually solve real world problems. That could be in a criminal setting with forensic psychology, or even alternatively, it could be in a user interface design setting with human factors. Many big companies like IBM, Apple, Microsoft actually have psychologists on staff that will kind of decide the layout of certain apps to make it intuitive and useful or fun to use. But then also, of course, things like marketing. Really, the takeaway is a lot of people hear psychologists, they just assume clinical psychologist or even academic. While in reality, it's a super broad field. Being a psychologist doesn't honestly tell you all that much about what somebody does day to day. Some are helping people, some are running businesses, other ones are just conducting research. Either way, hopefully this was at least somewhat informative. As always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.